All right, so I watched this video a week or two ago. This is a video by Vice News called "The Changing Vibe Among Young Conservatives," and I thought that this would be like a hit piece on the right, but it's actually not. I think that they make some really good points and some good faith attempts to try to understand the young conservative mind. So I kind of want to react to this and sort of like talk about this and like the content creators that are mentioned here.
We're walking into the American Economic Forum, not exactly a rowdy Trump rally. This is where young people who like reading policy briefs go. You know, if you want to understand the ideas that could...
Bro, dude's got the streamer fit right there.
Reading policy briefs go.
Dude's got the streamer fit.
You know, if you want to understand the ideas that could reshape conservatism in our country, this is where you come.
More working class voters are ditching the Democrat Party. It turns out that working class Hispanics also don't like open borders, inflation, and gender ideology.
This is true. If you focus on the issues, people are more likely to be attracted to the Republican Party. Honestly. So I like how they're focusing on the issues here, because that's what people should be paying more attention to. But it's sort of become like WWE instead of like gladiator sports. Why am I calling this a sport? It's not a sport. This is politics. This is the future of the country.
Across the U.S., tens of thousands of voters are flocking to the Republican Party. And many Gen Z and millennial intellectuals are capitalizing on that by reframing what it means to be conservative.
I think it's a little bit deceptive, though, to say that like so many people are moving to the Republican Party because a lot of young people, especially like my age and below, I'm 24 years old, are on the left side of things. I think generally what you'll see is the more into politics someone is, especially the more informed they are about politics and current events, the more Republican they seem to be. A lot of liberals don't even really seem to know how they can defend their own positions. But the people on the left who are my age or younger, they seem to be just very, very casual observers of politics, and they only tap in during election seasons, and then they dip out again. So the problem is the vast majority of people don't really follow politics all that closely. The vast majority of people are very casual observers of politics. That's why Howard Dean and he lost his campaign when he said, "Yeah, that wasn't a policy L, that was an optics L." Then, like, if people were walking by the TV and saw Howard Dean going, "Yeah," they're like, "Oh, that dude is strange. I don't think I'm going to vote for him." Has nothing to do with his policies at all. And that's how a lot of people my age engage with politics. So the idea that because people are moving towards the Republican Party, that means that the Republican Party is killing the Democratic Party, I think is a little bit of a misnomer.
The help of former Trump officials.
Because you're always going to have uninformed, misinformed, low-informed, or minimally engaged voters voting for people in the Democratic Party.
By reframing what it means to be conservative with the help of former Trump officials. This is not the old Republican establishment of corporate tax cuts and fighting terrorism. Instead, these guys are talking shit about wars overseas and big banks.
Wall Street's like oxygen. You're going to die without it, but you can die of too much of it, too. And we have overdone it.
True.
This departure from the GOP
being allowed to vape indoors
establishment is fueled by the economic concerns of young Americans who have seen housing and college prices skyrocket. Who are you guys? Who's making up this movement?
Angry Americans.
Angry Americans.
Yeah, I mean, I won't be as wealthy or successful as my parents. Most people won't be my age. We can't afford homes. We see people who are taking advantage of the system.
I think this is one of the biggest barriers that many people have to joining the Republican Party is they look at the Republican Party and they see anger. And I think that they look at that anger and they assume that that anger is hatred. That anger is not hatred. That anger is frustration, because a lot of Republicans are frustrated with complacency that many elected officials seem to have to the plight that many Americans feel. And also looking at the things that are going wrong with the country and seeing things not changing in a positive direction over time. The anger is not the same as hatred, but people look at it and be like, oh, they look angry. That's not cool. And then they go to the Democratic Party, which is like the opposite direction. It's like toxic positivity if it was a political party.
The most popular guys here is Nate Hochman. He's just 24, and his widespread political writing has made him a kind of influencer for the brainier side of this movement.
Hey, dude. How you doing?
Tonight, he's grabbing drinks with buddies, some of whom, like him, grew up in liberal households and have become more conservative than their parents.
One of the really valuable things that Trump did in 2016 was to completely bust open the horizons of possibility for what it meant to be conservative. What do conservatives care about? The family, social cohesion, and how do we actually use economics, for example, or a cultural agenda to serve those ends?
My only problem with that is, first of all, I think Donald Trump is not a proper conservative. I think I've talked about this before. Although I think, to be fair, it is a positive for the Republican Party if you can look at Donald Trump and say, hey, someone like him can be a Republican, you can too. Because I think that would probably draw in some moderates. I think that's why he won in 2016, to be honest. Donald Trump is not the greatest, I think, progenitor of the nuclear family. Let's put it like that. But I think one thing that's great about Donald Trump too is that he was extremely positive about what he wanted. He was like, let's make America great again. America's awesome. And coming off of Barack Obama's sort of like casting to the wayside the concept of American exceptionalism, seeing someone talking so positively about the country of America, even if it was perhaps almost erring on the side of jingoism at times, like still that sort of positive messaging about the state of America is something that the Republicans don't really have. Even if they're right about how to solve America's problems, sometimes they come off as so negative. It was great to see someone who had the same enemies as the American people, right? Which is like the press, the media, people who are propagating corruption in the American political system, but also had the same goals as them, right? Making the economy better, bringing more jobs to America, sort of protecting American industries, even though I'm not a big fan of the policies of trade wars. That's one thing that Donald Trump was supporting that connected with a lot of working class Americans. So like Donald Trump is a very unique political figure. I don't know if we're going to get a whole lot of more people like him in the future, but it sort of is a window into like what the future of Republican politics could look like if we try to be a little bit more broad and not just try to tap into a very narrow sector of what people want to hear when they're looking at a politician.
Like promoting paid family leave?
Paid family leave, child tax credits, right? Like a variety of ways to sort of organize a kind of conservative welfare state.
And is it fair to say like you see the value in some government regulation that can create sort of like economic equality?
Sure, yeah. I would probably use a different word than equality, but economic sort of broad-based prosperity.
But is the old guard going to get on board with that? Like, that's what I have trouble sort of believing.
Bro, too bad, bro. The old guard is old. They are dying off, okay? That's why I say give Vivek Ramaswamy 30 years and he'll be able to run for president, okay? After a while, we're not going to have to worry about these old racist boomers, okay?
Probably not. But there's a real desire to sort of retire a lot of those people.
Mm-hmm.
Paid family leave and child tax credits sound pretty liberal, but for young conservatives like Nate, they're a way to support a socially conservative agenda.
I think
Lindsay,
everyone here more or less probably
said in the
supports a ban
chat.
on abortion.
Oh my goodness.
There's a big difference between populist and politician.
Oh my goodness, I forgot that I kept the TTS on, but I might as well keep it on. Lindsay's in the chat said there's a big difference between populist and politician. No? Can you explain what you mean by that? Because populists can be politicians. They can also be private citizens. A populist is a type of politician. It's like saying there's a big difference between a socialist and a politician. No, there's not. These are just different and competing political ideologies.
But they also understand that
Maybe you're saying there's a difference between like a someone who happens to be a populist and someone who's a career politician, in which case, yes, this is true. But you've got many career politicians in America who are also populists. That's where I think what you're saying is tripping me up.
everyone here more or less probably supports a ban on abortion, but they also understand that a point that the left makes is that banning abortion isn't going to stop women from having abortions outright. If you really want to end abortion in America, it has to be building an entire infrastructure that supports children and families more than I think American policy does right now.
True. And we need more people talking to conservative pro-lifers, because right now I feel like a lot of people are siloed and segmented off, and they segregate themselves off from people who disagree with them politically. But if you talk to pro-lifers, these are the things that they support. They support things that will make life more habitable for the nuclear family and even single mothers. But the mainstream media has sort of demonized the pro-life movement to be just this nebulous, villainous group of Nazis who hate women and want to control their bodies. That sort of poison the well for a lot of people. No one wants to talk. Like, if you go up to someone and be like, "Hey, see that dude over there? He hates women. Why don't you go talk to him and see why he thinks the way he does?" You're gonna be like, "No, I don't want to do that." But right. I appreciate Vice actually like speaking to these conservatives and letting their true opinions be heard.
I spent time with, families who have trans kids in Texas. They're part of the working class. Do those families not count in the policies that you're talking about?
Well, all families count. We want to support families. I think the debate over the transgender issue, which is obviously incredibly fraught right now, has to do with this radical shift in the culture over the last 5 years or so, where we have really, really rapidly shifted our understanding of what gender means.
I keep meeting young people who are formerly liberal, who grew up in that environment, who are now turning to this movement. Why is that?
You have a lot of people who have genuine and legitimate concerns about any number of aspects of left-wing cultural pieties, who know that they will encounter serious social consequences and stigma for even gingerly broaching a lot of these topics around race, gender, sex.
And many of those young people are now going to podcasts and YouTube to find more skeptical perspectives across the political spectrum.
And one thing that's really cool, I like this about the right too, is a lot of the people who are like on the right, they're not like political nerds. I'm a little bit of a political nerd. That's why so much of my content is political. But like, look at this.
And many of those young people are now going to...
Andrew Schultz is not a political nerd. This is a comedian. The only reason why he talks about politics so much is that the left side of the spectrum has gone so crazy in certain aspects and gone so extreme that you can't help but look at them and laugh. And that's why you see a lot of comedians sort of like appearing to be on the right. It's like, no, we're not on the right. Y'all just moved all the way over there, and I see you falling over a cliff. And I think that's really funny because you're like, why am I not jumping off the cliff with you? So like, look at this.
Podcasts and YouTube to find...
He's not a political nerd.
More skeptical perspective.
Joe Rogan, he's not a political nerd.
Across the political spectrum.
Now, Russell Brand, I think he's become a political nerd, but he's more of like a hippie.
The kind of ideas and motifs.
Hippie conspiracy theorist. In the best possible way to put that phrase. I think that being a political conspiracy theorist is not always a bad thing, because some conspiracy theories are true.
Of cancel culture, that we can't have open, fair discussions around race, gender, sexuality.
And in the more conservative corners, the phrase woke.
Okay, Ben Shapiro he's a bit of a political nerd. To be fair, Ben Shapiro is not like the greatest. He's like the the news for kids type of content creator. I think he's sort of like is a very like dumbed down, basic, not perhaps the most thoroughly intellectual form of like political analysis. Kind of like a replacement for Fox News. I think Fox News sort of is in the same space in that regard. Not that it's terrible, but it's very like basic and reductionist. I would only use like content like Fox News or the Daily Wire to introduce someone to American politics who's like very like young, not for someone who wants like a deep dive into like the nuances of major political issues.
Is everywhere.
Corporate America's embrace of wokeness.
The woke indoctrination. Not even the military is immune these days from all this wokeness.
It started as a phrase for Black political consciousness. It's now become a catch-all term for liberal culture issues related to...
Hey, you're a white liberal. This is your fault too. Right? White liberals, they co-opted the movement. The woke movement was from the conscious movement in the Black community. During Black Lives Matter, they saw the conscious movement sort of supporting non-Black people, and they were like, hey, we can use those Black people to support our political ends. And they co-opted the woke movement, and it's just meant progressive ever since. It's kind of sad because even though, and I guess I'm not even someone who primarily identifies with my race, I primarily identify as a Christian. Part of this is me being Black. I have some sort of respect for them also, is the fact that even though they're new age, they're relatively spiritual. I sort of had some slight respect for the conscious movement. At least consider, I mean, to be fair, I didn't know a whole lot about it. Some of them are pretty racist against like white people and Jews and other folks, which anti-Semitism in the Black community is a whole conversation for another day. Yeah, it's just sad how it's just become co-opted into progressivism, something far less respectable than the conscious movement ever was.
Political consciousness. It's now become a catch-all term for liberal culture issues related to gender and race.
The idea that these ideas are liberal is insane. They're not liberal, they're progressive.
And one media company has gone all in on these issues. We're at PragerU, which is a group that finds young talent and develops them into conservative influencers that rack up millions of views. And when you're walking through the offices, you're conservative influencers that rack up.
Because Amala left PragerU like months ago.
Millions of views.
And by the way, she's a great conservative commentator, by the way. I do enjoy her content. I think she might be my favorite right-wing streamer. I guess unless Tim Pool counts. Tim Pool's my favorite.
When you're walking through the offices, you're seeing like a lot of 20-year-olds, 22-year-olds, 25-year-olds. It's a super young employee base. They target young people online who are dipping their toes in conservative waters.
Hi, everybody.
Radio host Dennis Prager founded it more than 10 years ago, and CEO Marissa Streit helped grow it. While it's not an actual university, it's a hub for conservative content that's helped build influencers like Candace Owens. Their goal? To get their message anywhere young people consume content. Their sleek videos capture Gen Z eyeballs on Instagram and YouTube.
There is a big difference between mild global warming and catastrophic global warming.
Some feel more academic, others are flashy, catering perfectly to teenagers.
It's really cool, the business model. I wish that people did similar videos about the left and how they use this, because they've got Vice, they've got Vox, they've got Impact, they've got now this. There are all sorts of organizations that are on the left that are sort of doing the same thing. Now, I think when it comes to personalities, like streamers, podcasters, those don't seem to have as much success unless like audio-only podcasters run by, journalists. They seem to do well. But I think they don't do well among people my age. I think it's like millennials who sort of are in like very, very liberal areas. They seem to, if I had to guess, that's why those shows are more popular. Like you see people looking at the top podcasts and they see like a bunch of like leftists from like Washington Post and Vox hosting these podcasts that are like number 3, 4, 5, 6 in the news and commentary. And it's people that you've probably never heard of before. And they're like, who are these people? Who's listening to these podcasts? It's probably those people. But in general, yeah, like there's still like YouTube videos and content that's like very much geared toward people of my generation, and people point to those and use them for sourcing for their information. And it's like, this is part of the information war. This is what's being used, but it'd be cool to see a sort of like a look on the other end of that lens. There's nothing wrong, by the way, with using these methods for political persuasion, by the way. I don't want to make it seem like I'm disdaining the other side for using these same tactics. I think it's completely fine. I just wanted to point out it's something that the other side does, or they tried to do.
We merge these older ideas, these conservative ideas, with a youthful audience and a youthful staff that knows how to bring it to young people. And that's really the secret sauce behind PragerU.
PragerU's funding, mostly from conservative donors, went from $11 million in 2017 to $55 million last year. They're now investing.
Okay, I guess one thing that's negative is that the money for some of these big organizations comes from, like donors. It could come from the GOP, right? And you kind of get a little iffy once the political party is actually controlling these groups. Not a big fan of that, and that's why I like when people are independent. Like Tim Pool is independent; he like owns his company and stuff. Amala is now independent; she no longer works for PragerU. It's nice to see people sort of like going on their own. Tucker Carlson is on his own as well. So stuff like that's pretty cool to see.
In their youngest viewers.
What happened in her homeland that made Ayn Rand need to escape and move to the USA? The rise of communism. That is correct. It was the communist.
We've really widened the type of content that we make. So now we start making content for 4-year-olds all the way to 104 years old.
Oh yeah, that's why they hate Ayn Rand. I forget. People hate Ayn Rand on Reddit. It's crazy.
Rise of communism. That is correct. It was the communist.
We've really widened the type of content that we make. So now we start making content for 4-year-olds all the way to 104 years old.
I will say that when you get to people that young, though, it's blatant propaganda sometimes. Now, I don't like to paint with a broad brush because I haven't seen a lot of this content, but I've seen clips from Tuttle Twins, and it's like, this is straight up political propaganda. We shouldn't be feeding political propaganda to like young children. Just like, I feel like that just poisons their mind. It's like you don't want to, you should propagandize to your kid, even if it's something as obviously as obvious. It's like, the sky is blue, right? Like, you could teach them things that are true for sure, but I think if you sort of try to mix entertainment with information in this like symbiotic way, I think it's just like, it's a way that's like very dangerous. I would not be a fan of playing something like Tuttle Twins if I was ever to be blessed with children. I would not play content like Tuttle Twins for my children. I might talk to my child about politics, but I would have it be a completely different discussion or be in a different realm than what is part of the entertainment. I just think that once you put in the information in the entertainment, it becomes propaganda, and that's outside the bounds of what should be acceptable.
We bring alternative solutions and perspectives on things. Every time the left claims that the right is a journey into the future of Handmaid's Tale here in America is when we garner a larger audience.
What role does, PragerU, organizations like this, play in this sort of new conservatism?
Incubator. We can identify young, talented individuals, and we can turn them into new role models for our society.
Then make right-wing industry plants.
We got to see this firsthand as Marissa and her staff judged eager Zoomers vying to be PragerU's next star.
I think I would make a wonderful PragerU personality because I've really been on the front lines the past 3 years on this college campus. I've been a TikToker making conservative content over there for like 1.5 years now, and I've been banned 9 times.
I don't quite understand her story, like her personal story. She talked a little bit about being banned, but everybody's being banned.
It's great when they have the story day one, but it's not always an immediate deal breaker because we can build it out of them. So.
It seems like the fastest way to stardom here is getting ostracized by liberals, aka canceled, or
pretty easy to do nowadays.
Disillusioned by left-wing politics. And that's exactly what happened to Amala Ekpunobi, a 22-year-old who up until a few years ago was a liberal teen activist. After posting videos on social about her new conservative views, she went viral and caught Marissa's eye.
We're talking Keke Palmer, gender theory, 4-year-old trans kid.
Yo, 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 what up, guys? Unapologetic Live. I'm your host, Amala Ekpunobi. Taylor's in the producer's bay. Is a new army school getting real woke?
What is it about that sort of like woke generation or woke movement that drives you nuts?
The fact that it just takes people and boils them down to what are really superficial identity characteristics. So much of my work when I was on the left was just revolving around my race, being a female. It completely dictated everything I did as a young person. So now that I'm seeing other young people who are being subjected to the same narrative that I got, I go hard on that one, just to try and help and give a different perspective that maybe saves them from believing that victimhood mentality.
And what would be an example
I will
of
say
a video?
there is a danger in something similar happening on the right. I see this in MAGA, which is one reason why I hate MAGA, where it's like, oh, if you're a real American, if you're a real conservative, then you won't drink Bud Light at all. Drink another drink that's owned by InBev. Like, or like the whole situation with Kyle Rittenhouse, where Kyle Rittenhouse didn't want to support Donald Trump because he's not very strong on supporting the Second Amendment, which is literally true. And so he was like, I'm going to support RFK because RFK is better at supporting the Second Amendment than Donald Trump is. And then people were hating on him, turning on him. Until he said, you know what, never mind, I actually do support Donald Trump. And then everyone was like, hey, Kyle Rittenhouse again. Like, come on. I feel like to a certain degree, you do have to fall in line with these MAGA people in order to get their praise, which is why I am just cutting myself off for them. I am not MAGA in any way, shape, or form. Any sort of cult mentality or cult group is not healthy.
Different perspective that maybe saves them from believing that victimhood mentality.
And what would be an example of a video that you would do on one of those subjects?
I could talk about how affirmative action harms everybody. What you are doing is essentially fixing past discrimination with present discrimination.
True. It's institutional discrimination is literally what it is.
And the
Institutional
people
racism.
who are non-people of color, watching these people get to look at them and go, well, I don't know if she got that job because of who she is or because of what she's done. And it sows seeds of mistrust all over.
How do you think this kind of new wave of young conservatism will change the political landscape?
I just think we're going to see a lot more young people come to conservatism before they come to progressivism. The only reason that people don't do that now is because they have an idea of what it means to be a conservative. That's not true at all.
While the culture wars often seem pretty ridiculous, they do tap into the anger folks feel toward people they see as, quote, elite.
I mean, the culture wars don't seem ridiculous. The only way they seem ridiculous is if you belittle the beliefs of the others on both sides, or one side of the issue, or both sides of the issue. Like, oh, you're fighting over bathrooms. Like, yeah, I guess you have to commit reductionist to think that it's ridiculous. It makes a lot of sense. And I actually am sympathetic to people who believe in the gender theory, because like I've heard the arguments for it. And so, like, I understand where the people are coming from. I've listened to the people who support those ideologies, for example. Like, the gender theory is the big one that's happening right now. But also, like, the critical race theory. I've heard people talk about that. I can have sympathy with that side without agreeing with them. I think that them fighting for what they believe in is not ridiculous at all. And conservatives fighting for what we believe in is not ridiculous either. Now, the thing that they believe in might be ridiculous. But I understand their mentality, and if I had their mentality, I think it would not be ridiculous to me. So I think it reduces the importance of these issues and how much these issues matter to these people. Like, you know, maybe they're wrong, but I don't think that engaging with the culture war is ridiculous at all. I think it's actually very important because it to a degree, many culture war issues point to very fundamental basics of what our society should look like. And I think pretty much everyone should be engaging with that to some degree.
Conservative, that's not true at all.
While the culture wars often seem pretty ridiculous, they do tap into the anger folks feel toward people they see as, quote, elite. There's a real shift that shows Democrats have started to do way better among folks with a college degree than without one. Thomas Frank has written extensively on the shift among Democrats in the 80s, from being a party of the working class
I liked what he had
to a
to say
party
here,
of the
too.
highly educated.
Young people are the lowest hanging fruit for liberals, or they should be. But where are liberals kind of screwing up to where some of these young people aren't?
You know, I am a liberal, right? And I vote for Democrats, and I'm pretty far to the left, right? And there came a point when I got sick of righteousness. I got fucking sick of righteousness. I couldn't stand it anymore.
What specifically was it?
You know those yard signs that would say, "In this house we believe," and then they have a list of causes.
Like science.
Science is real is one of them. Black Lives Matter is one of them. I would look at these signs and I'd be like, why do these signs irritate me? I agree with everything on them. And I thought about it for a while, and I'm like, because they've left one cause out. And that's anything having to do with labor. anything having to do with work, anything having to do with economics. Look, this liberalism has evolved into a movement of scolding that just absolutely rubs people the wrong way.
I will say that there's an issue with a sign that goes beyond just, nothing about labor, nothing about the unions. It's like, and I think it points more to what he's about to say there, which is about scolding. It's like, what this sign really says is that if you disagree with me on politics, if you are not a progressive, then what that means is you think Black lives are worthless. You think some humans shouldn't exist. You think that love doesn't matter. You think women's rights are worthless. You think that science is irrelevant. You think that, I don't know what water is life is. I don't know. You think that we should be drinking nothing but Mountain Dew. Like, I don't know what that one means. Water is life. I don't know what that one means. That one, you have to get someone conscious to explain that one to me.
Has evolved into a movement of scolding that just absolutely rubs people the wrong way. That's not how you build a movement. You don't just exclude people off the bat for being wrong. I mean, that's very satisfying, but it's poison.
But you know what that does help with? Twitter likes. The invention of Twitter and Facebook has really been cancerous for American political conversation and dialogue.
To a left-wing movement.
It's that poison feels like it's everywhere, and maybe that's media, maybe it's not. But there are a lot of people being canceled. There are a lot of people being scolded, and I wonder where those people are going.
I mean, they're going to one of two places. They become apolitical, or if the conservative movement is smart, they'll make a place for them. What we are missing in this country is a traditional working class left. And so what fills that space? Well, one thing is the culture wars.
Young political stars like Ron DeSantis and J.D. Vance are now on the road testing talking points. The formula for now is to take on big business in the name of culture, to make more Americans see the culture wars as crucial for the country's survival.
I mean, yeah, it kind of is. We're talking about what society is going to look like for our future children. Seems kind of important to me. I don't know about you, but that seems important to me.
Thank you. We do not have to live like this. We do not have to let the Chinese steal our manufacturing base. We do not have to let the pharmaceutical industry force a product on us in order for us to get a job.
No movement would succeed if it didn't have a good reason, if it didn't answer something that was a deep need that people have.
It's all.
What I like about this dude is that he has what I think a lot of progressives lack, especially more so in the political content, like content creators, maybe not content creators here, but political commentary and analysis sphere, which is empathy. He seems to have a lot of empathy for the MAGA movement and understanding what fuels it and what drives it. I think a lot of people on the left seem to not really have as much of that empathy. And that goes both ways, by the way. A lot of people on the right, I think, don't have a lot of empathy for people on the left. And that's part of why the right is not as successful as it should be. But it's refreshing to hear someone on the left speak as though he understands why the MAGA movement was so popular. Because it's going to take people like him, if the left is going to have a future, which maybe the left is going to have a future, maybe it won't, we'll have to see. But if the left is going to have a future, it's going to be on the backs of thought leaders like him, who have to be like, hey, we have to acknowledge that the MAGA movement has some legitimate points, or they're at least addressing some legitimate grievances. We need to find better answers than to call the people who disagree with us racist in order to succeed moving forward.
All based on this mind virus called woke ideology. That is what's infecting all these different institutions.
What is that link between class?
I also just realized that I think they're sort of one thing I think they're wrong about is they're sort of pitching the culture war as a replacement for, or like a way to say, hey, look, we care about the working class. The culture war is not a way to say, oh, we care about the working class. There are working class appeals, right? Supporting the drilling of oil, for example, supporting the lowering of taxes. Those are working class issues. But the culture war just affects everyone. It affects rich people and poor people. You know, look, it's destroyed Elon Musk's son. So like, it hits the rich as well as the poor. It's like the rain or the lava from Pompeii.
War and culture war.
The culture wars are endlessly amusing because they give you this feeling of persecution that you, the average American, your values are being insulted by TV, and they can be invented constantly.
We will fight woke in the classroom. We will fight woke in businesses. We will fight woke in government agencies. We're not going to surrender to woke. We are going to stand and we're going to keep our country free.
So, I mean, I think they missed the point slightly, but I mean, especially for a video by Vice, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Let me just read some of these comments and see if some of them are not garbage. The fact that PragerU is in an actual university should always be mentioned in the same breath as his name. I know it's not really relevant. I find it a little bit uncomfortable to push political ideology at 4 years old. I agree. To be fair, I mean, you're seeing people do that on the left, but still, both sides is wrong. I think teaching children kindness, empathy, caring for less fortunate, etc., are far more important to teach that young. Yeah, I agree with that. Although, to be fair, the people who are, putting on Tuttle Twins to indoctrinate their children are probably teaching their children the same thing. It says this conference is wider than. Oh my goodness, why did they go like that? Hold on, it says. This conference is wider than season 2 of The Wire. I have not watched The Wire yet. No spoilers, please. Witnessing conservatives fully embrace and engage in identity politics after spending years crying about how much they hate it is just truly remarkable. Well, I think one thing that's difficult is they're being forced to engage in identity politics because that's what the left is doing. But also they're not going into identity politics in the same way that the left has done. The left has said, you are white, this means you are this. You are black, that means you are this. To a certain degree, many conservatives are doing that with the whole gender war thing, where it's like you are a man, so you must go into the bathroom with the men. You are a man, so you must play sports against the men. But I think that is actually a very limited. Those are very limited dictates. So it's not that bad. Calling the culture war the identity politics is a bit disingenuous, or at least it betrays that you don't really understand what the the culture war actually is about. Tribalism is exhausting. True. What a company that sounds like a school but isn't, getting a hold of young people to train them to be politically driven and influence other young people. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is by definition indoctrination. No, not really. It's a company hiring people to to be good political commentators and successful and spread the message across the world. It's not telling them to be political. They're already political. They're political and going to PragerU being like, hey, give me a shot. I want to make a show. Right? That's a little bit different than them like pulling teens out of high school and saying, hey, be a right-wing pundit for me. That's not what's happening here. All right, 2 more comments here. It's not that the left isn't willing to have open discussions surrounding race, gender, etc. It's that the types of people in this video often don't approach these discussions in good faith and are simply often to pick a fight, denigrate someone when you eventually come to a disagreement with them politically. This is actually completely false. It's that the conservatives that are often being spoken to are not the people in this video. These are like introverted nerds, right? Like half of them are writing articles for like National Review, right? Like that one dude who got interviewed. They're not people that you might meet on the street. They're not like brash content creators. They're not like Steven Crowder. So there are bad faith actors out there, or people goofy and stupid like Alex Stein. But they're not the types of people that you would see at conferences like these. These people are relatively intelligent. They're persuasive. They seem empathetic. So they're not the types of people that anyone on the left should be afraid of. All right, last one here is strip away all the appearance of youthful vigor, and in the end, this new crop of conservatives is all about money and power. Sure, dude. Sure. Okay. That was a good video. I like that video. I'm glad that I got a chance to react to it. And I hope that Vice News makes more videos like these. Who made this? Gianna Toboni? Gianna Toboni. I hope that she goes on and makes more videos like this because, this was pretty good.